What self-sabotage looks like is any type of behavior that a person gets in their own way, like is their own sort of doing that blocks their success. Essentially, they being their own worst enemy. And their brain, was kind of we're sending off subconscious danger signals. Danger, danger, danger. And then your conscious mind has a great way of rationalizing things.
I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, and this is UnCeiling You, the podcast where we explore how to break internal and external ceilings that limit your growth. This season, we're talking about networking, but not the kind that's just about who you know. We're talking about building a community, one that grows stronger as you grow more self-aware, because connection without self-trust will always feel like performance, not a partnership. In the last episode, Catherine Lazarick reminded us that leadership begins in our body. That's your presence, your posture, your nervous system are all about how you lead and connect. Today, we're exploring what happens when your mind works against that readiness. When opportunity knocks and instead of excitement, your brain whispers, danger. We've all been there, a promotion, a presentation, a chance to show what we're capable of, and sometimes inside of us hits the brakes. That's self-sabotage in motion. Today, to help us unpack this, I'm joined with Dr. Albert Bramante, a seasoned talent agent with more than 2 decades of experience in the entertainment industry. Dr. Bramante holds a PhD in psychology and is also a certified hypnotist. What makes him unique is how he bridges performance in psychology in helping actors recognize when fear is running the show. He's also the author of Rise Above the Script, a book that explores the hidden drivers behind self-defeat and the mindset shifts that unlock full potential. So let's dive in. Hi, Dr. Bramante. Let's just get right into it. In your book, Rise Above the Script, you talk about how self-sabotage can derail careers. And so what I want to do, just to kind of level the playing field or make sure that we're all communicating clearly, is can you define what self-sabotage is in context of both actors, but also people who are professionals in the workplace?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Natalie, for having me on here. I'm really happy to be here. And so, what self sabotage looks like is any type of behavior that a person gets in their own way, like is their own sort of doing that blocks their success. So, it's almost essentially they being their own worst enemy.
Can you maybe give a story or an example of something that you've seen in your career that would be a good example of this?
Well, especially with my work with actors. I mean, my
Mhm.
20 plus years working with actors. So what this might look like is, not showing up for appointments, being late to appointments, not being fully prepared or immersed for appointments. So it's really things that are holding themselves back. And in a sense, like they're their own worst enemy. When I first started, I had was working with this young dynamic actress who really seemed to have a lot of good potential. She, had great look, great personality, great vibe, and went on a couple of small auditions. And then finally, I got her a series regular audition, which is in my world that meant like every episode produced. It could have been potentially big. And we sent her the audition, sent her the script, decides, and everything was great. Confirmed. This is, of course, when things were in person. And I get a voicemail, not a phone call, a voicemail, because I get a call from a blocked number. Now, I don't really answer calls from blocked numbers. So it went to voicemail. And in the voicemail, all I got was, "Hi, I can't do this." That was it.
Mm.
And then, I mean, it was using the only audition I had at the moment. So, and I kind of recognized the voice. So I attempted to call her back. It went to voicemail, went to voicemail, went to voicemail. And then I sent her an email, nothing. And then about a week later, I was just, curious, went to her website, that was disabled.
Mm.
offline, and I'm thinking I couldn't figure it out. I mean, it was the last I ever heard from her. So I wanted to know what was going on here. There was obviously something, because it was a little bit bigger than just I didn't want to do just simply just not wanting to do the audition. Because that could have been a conversation. She could have told me a couple days earlier. My hunch initially was maybe that, this was getting a little too real. And the idea of getting too close was getting too real. I had another similar situation where I was working with this male actor. Great look, got called in a lot. This was, when soap operas were still in New York, he had an audition for a 3-year contract role. Again, confirmed, cut them aside, everything was great. I get a call the morning of, I'm really not going to do this audition. And I asked him, I said, well, why come? He's like, the character is a little gay, and I don't want to appear gay. And I'm like, because now there was nothing in the script that verbatimly said the sexual orientation of the character, just that he was very, worldly, well spoken. I was like, what's going on here? And these are huge auditions. You went on plenty of auditions for these local things and these small things without any problems, but now all of a sudden you're turning this down the morning of. So it was kind of like a something that was really tugging at me that something deeper is going on here. There's another layer here happening.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's, getting too real,
Mhm.
like, or, and I also know a lot of times we become comfortable staying at a certain level,
Right.
even though, and this is all unconsciously, consciously, of course, all of us are working every day to level up
Right.
our skill. We're always constantly doing that. And that's, however, there's something deeper going on often. And it might be, again, some sort of fear happening, whether it's change, whether it's growth, fear of the growth. And so seems to be happening a lot. Another agent of mine was telling me that this actor was ready to do a final callback for on Broadway and said, "I don't want to do this." And so it's not uncommon.
So when you dig in deeper and you suspect it's fear, does that fear show like how does that fear relate to imposter syndrome?
Well, imposter syndrome is really, again, the typical thing of I feel like I'm a fraud.
Mhm.
That's really at the end of it is I feel like I'm a fraud, and it's sort of just feeling like you're stuck in that situation. Um, Maybe again the pressure of I'm not ready to be an A-lister yet because I feel like if I get on set or gonna not are going to not know what I'm doing, or not I'm not
Mhm.
gonna know what I'm doing, or I'm not gonna mess up my lines. A whole host of things can happen.
Right. So how like if you're thinking about self-sabotage and you're thinking about like maybe people are going to discover maybe I'm afraid to step up or maybe I feel like I'm a fraud. How do you think that they can turn that around?
The fundamental thing is really your identity, and the issue is having, an honest conversation with yourself and what do you really want, and that's what it really boils down to. Because consciously, these actors can tell you with a straight face, and I believe it's serious. Like, yeah, I want a big part. I want a huge role, but that's scary because that requires change. That requires a lot of extra responsibility and scrutiny that may be onto you now. That's just the reality of it when you take on any type of larger responsibilities in any profession. There's going to be extra scrutiny. There's going to be extra responsibility and extra eyes on you.
Right.
And that might be scary. And I think having maybe those type of conversations with actors in the beginning, like, okay, are you say you're ready, but are you really ready?
Huh. I could see that in the corporate world. It's like I really want to go for that bigger role. It could be an actor going for that real bigger role. And when you step up to the plate, you're like, "Whoa, there is extra scrutiny. There is." a lot more eyes looking at you. Am I really ready?
Yeah. Am I really ready or determined to do this?
So when you push through the veil of that fear, what kind of transformations have you seen people make when they actually push through?
One thing, it's much more liberating, number one. Number two, they're a lot more focused when it comes to auditions and when it comes to actual performances because number one, they don't look at auditions anymore as tests. They don't look at auditions anymore as a situation where they're being judged. They look now at auditions as opportunities to perform, chances to showcase their work.
Hmm. So I could see how that can relate to the corporate environment because it's like, okay, it could be an interview or it could be you're doing a new project. So it's like an opportunity to actually stretch yourself and to see what you're made of and maybe even surprise yourself.
Hmm. Oh yeah, and more, more responsibility too. I mean, and that's, I see this a lot even with young leaders or mid-sized leaders, especially after being promoted or the chance of being promoted, is the new responsibility, the new scrutiny again, and that's where sometimes imposter syndrome is normal, or typical thing that sometimes initially that you experience in the beginning.
Yeah. So I was looking at your website and it's, of course, we introduced you at the very beginning, but you have a lot of tools that you offer on your website. Can you talk a little bit deeper about what it is that you offer for folks that are
Sure.
wanting to go for these transformations?
So the one thing that, in order to really start the transformation, any type of transformation in your life, we have to start transforming the inner life before we can transfer the outer. And the outer will happen once an internal transfer has happened. So a lot of times it's kind of removing old programming in our mind and in our subconscious mind, more maybe childhood patterns or other ways of relating. So on my website, which are kind of like, they're like what I call micro doses or a bit of a micro session in a sense, meditation coaching session, where you get to listen to a download for 15, 20, there's like 15 to 17 minutes, not long. And you listen to like a daily basis for 30 days. What happens when you do it consistently, you start to see small changes happening. And it uses kind of like what I would like to do with these meditations is put you like in kind of an output, help you go into an alpha state. An alpha state is like just it's not like a deep, set of trance or relaxation. It's just comfortable. It's just concentration, like the state of mind when you're concentrating.
Mhm, mhm.
And so that's what it really is all about. They offer opportunities for you to start rewiring your mind, and rewiring your brain, rewiring your nervous system, your neurology, and that again, when you start to rewire, when that starts to rewire the outer world, your outer world will start to rewire back too.
Okay. So, can you talk a little bit about the range of tools? Because it seems like you have quite a bit there.
Yeah, I mean, there's something for everybody. I mean, they all work on the same principles, but I have something for everybody. If you're looking for sports performance, if you're looking for public speaking or for leadership or procrastination or, help on being more magnetic or being charismatic, or developing a charisma. There's something for everybody on there. Better sleep, better relationship, better communication. So there's something for everybody. So I encourage everyone to take a look at what's available, and there's some, you'll find that there's at least a few things that'll be good for you for whatever you want to improve.
Right. So, when you look at all your tools, what do you see people most gravitate towards the most?
I would say leadership or just general confidence,
Mm,
general like kind of like confidence boost,
okay.
because that really at the fundamental state is what's so important. Because for any type of state, especially for those going into leadership or or where they want to be in a position of influence, the one thing you really have to do is master your internal state first, your inner state. This is why, like, you'll see oftentimes when they have like programs like charisma or influence or, developing your communication skills, there's a big component on your internal states because that has to go like internally before you can go externally.
Right. What kind of do you have any before or after stories, like when people before they started using your meditation programs versus after, to describe like what was the before and what was the after?
Yeah, usually it's a lot of subtle changes, like just feeling more confident, like, especially for some of the actors I work with, they feel a lot more confident and present when they're auditioning
Mm,
and when they're doing
mhm.
that. So, I mean, there are consistent changes. They may be small in the beginning, but again, change builds upon another.
Okay.
A lot of times, especially I think why a lot of people fail to like stick with goals is because they expect change to be so gradual and so fast.
Right.
And yeah, change is definitely possible even overnight on some level, but it's going to be slow. But you have to sort of look at it this way. It took you years to get at where you're at now.
Mhm.
It's going to take a little bit while. I mean, it may not obviously may not take nearly that long, but it's not going to be overnight. It's not going to be like, okay, tomorrow, you know, your life is going to be 100% different. But you could start to see some progression over time.
Right. I know for me, and you had heard my episode where I talked about Leora. So I have Natasha, who is my inner critic, and then I have Leora, who is my, I would say, my goddess, the inner goddess for me. And when I started tapping into Leora and saying, okay, if Leora were here, like my highest and best self, how would she be feeling? How would she be walking? How would she
Uh-huh.
be commanding? What would her presence be like? I did see a huge change, and it was really cool because I was using Leora on the tennis court. And when you play tennis, you get a rating based on your scores.
Hmm.
And when you hit against another person, if you win, your rating goes up. If you lose, your rating goes down. And as soon as I started using Leora, my rating increased like gangbusters. And that was a inner change, a change from the inside.
Completely. Yeah, and that's really important. A change from the inside.
You know that moment when things finally line up and you get the invitation, the opportunity, the green light? Instead of feeling ready, you freeze. That's the moment most people call self-sabotage. But here's the truth, it's not sabotage, it's protection. It's your brain's way of saying, hold on, this feels unfamiliar, therefore unsafe. The trick isn't to push through, it's to pause for 3 seconds and name what's really happening. Ask yourself, is this danger or is this growth? Because in that 3 second window, you can shift from autopilot to awareness. You remind your nervous system that excitement and fear can feel the same, but only one moves you forward. When you do that, you're not fighting your fear, you're retraining it. And over time, those tiny 3 second pauses become your power moves, the difference between spiraling out and stepping up. So the next time your brain screams danger when opportunity knocks, take a breath and say, thank you for protecting me, and walk through the door anyway.
And that's the whole thing. Like sometimes on a one-on-one coaching session, I may work with somebody like that with their inner parts or their inner, selves. And, work with the higher, kind of like the higher self and the even the inner critic. Because I have a viewpoint that I view that, yeah, the inner critic will sometimes say some harsh things.
Hmm.
But I also think that the inner critic may be a bit misinformed and is really just trying to protect you
Right.
and might be misinformed. So maybe, you know, this is gonna sound, again, this is why I love doing the work I do. It's unconventional, but it may sound a bit odd, but I might even have a conversation between the inner critic and higher self. and see where we can go and where we can mediate a plan for that person.
Wow.
Like if I was doing a one-on-one coaching session, that's what I would do. In a sense, I would, of course, the person would be open to it, but that would be the one thing I would say is, okay, let's see what we can get accomplished here.
Okay. So how can you tell me without, you know, relaying any specifics, is there one impressive story where you were talking to the person's inner critic and higher self and it caused a huge transformation? Like what happened before and after?
Well, I've seen people like actually, even sometimes stop addiction or smoking, and a
Oh,
lot of times it could be because, they're the inner critic was looking for something to smooth. The higher self really wanted the person to get healthy. So we developed a new system. Well, maybe, the person will do some journaling when they get a craving, or maybe they'll do some deep breathing, get a glass of water when they get a craving. And, so it's kind of like what we want to do is satisfy everybody, satisfy the inner critic, but also satisfy a higher self and get them
mhm.
to work together and like me, it's like working as a mediator.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could see like my inner critic really comes out to when it comes to work when I'm working too hard.
Yeah. Yeah, again, that protective, like slow down,
Slow it down,
like
baby. Yeah.
yeah. So it's because again, it's looking out for you. Again, it may just be misinformed. To keep it, and even if you don't necessarily, go down this route of the inner critic for some listening, your brain is there to protect you for whatever cost it takes, and even if it's like the mentality, whatever it takes, I'm protecting you.
Yeah.
And even in now looking back, when these after I've kind of calmed down from these situations I talked about earlier with these actors, again, it was self protective going on.
What were they trying to protect themselves from?
I guess the major anxiety, they may not have been ready, and their brain, was kind of were sending off subconscious danger signals. Danger, danger, danger.
Scary,
And
scary, scary.
so yeah, exactly, it's scary. And then your conscious mind has a great way of rationalizing things. So it's not
Yeah.
gonna come out and say, "I'm scared," like in this case of the actor, the character is too gay, the character is too feminine. I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah. And I could see where we use that rationalization reasoning to respond to our fear of failure and fear of excess. What can listeners do today to really I think it's important to know, like, to listen to yourselves and hear that fear. How can they really tap into, okay, the reason I've rationalized not going to that appointment or saying no or not just going or self sabotaging is fear. How do they like tap in and become self aware, do you think?
Well, the important thing is to again, come to understand this is a possibility,
Mm,
first of all, and what's really going on here. And then, the question is how do you see yourself? If you were to look in the mirror honestly, what do you see?
yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times, especially for actors, they have or somewhere in there is that mindset of struggle, of the mindset of I must be starving, things must be hard, art must be hard, art must be painful. And I think that's where it comes in too, where it's okay that you're so used to that. Then anything, counter to that is scary. And then also fundamentally, we have to look at what is your relationship with money and abundance. Because a lot of people are walking around, I think, with problematic scripts around money where they think money is radioactive and bad, even though 'cause anybody will consciously tell you, yes, I would love to make more money. I don't want to be poor. But let's say you grew up in a family that might have been, you know, overly, religious or overly, kind of like moral and more high morals that might have sent messages to you, maybe not explicitly, but inferring that money was evil, money was the root of all evil. Well, I'm not an evil person, so you'll it'll do anything in its power to kind of stop you from making money.
Right. It seems it's interesting how these things keep coming up and how important it is, and we hear it. So it's we hear it, but are we doing something about it? You
That's the question.
That's the question. So, and you bring together psychology, hypnosis, NLP, very different tools to help people do something about that. Can you let people know what can they do, what practical thing that they can do, but also how they can access you to be that person to actually move through the veil, move through this problem to actually get
Yeah.
this thing fixed?
Well, there's a lot of things you can do, and this can be even done on a daily basis. Is anytime you go into a or about to go in to do something important, whether it's a sales call, whether it's a interview or an audition, is to kind of take a few moments to just close your eyes, take a deep breath in and out, and recall a time in your life. Could be recent, could be in the past, this and that, where you felt the most powerful, like a powerful moment in your life. And what I would do is spend some time reflecting on that memory. Biggest thing I would say is what powerful moment, live it, breathe it, experience it, do whatever it is. Live it, live it, see, like really experience it with your five senses. Spend some time in there because now it'll start activating all the feelings in your body. Your
Sure.
physiology will start to change because, again, that memory, you'll feel powerful. Now, keep that, keep that, keep that. And then I would kind of set an anchor in there, like maybe making a circle with your index finger and your thumb and make that circle and just when that memory happens, you make that circle. And then it comes down to it at the end, every time you go about to go into that audition or that meeting, you make that circle again, and that'll kind of anchor those feelings again. Because when you feel powerful, when you feel more productive, it's gonna be much more effective in what you're doing. You're gonna be much more comfortable in your own skin, and your state is going to be controlled, which is you're going to be much more productive in a better frame of mind. And that's something you can do for free. That's doesn't take much to do. 3 minutes, and that's it. Another thing I would say is, and what you can do even when you're not doing this is do power poses through a couple times throughout the day.
Superman.
Superman. Super like the Superman pose or Superman attack. And I'm kind of borrowing this from Amy Cuddy and Tony Robbins, who kind of talk a lot about this. And it's all about kind of like standing up tall, like almost look at the stance that Superman makes. Like when you see in the cartoon in the comic books, he has that tall, shoulders back, stomach in, and kind of like that wide stance. And I would just hold that position for like 2 minutes, one or two or three times a day if you can, because you're changing your neurology and you're actually adding more, endorphins, dopamine, in your body that will make you much more focused.
That's very helpful. I could see that because on the tennis court when Leora was there, the thing that I felt was my hands relax on my tennis racket. Because when I'm tense, I grip it like a hammer. And instead, I was like, okay, where in my body am I holding tension? Relax it. And it actually allowed me to whip through the ball a lot faster. So it made a huge difference. It's not the Superman pose, it's actually the opposite, but it worked for me.
It's all about just keeping your body like in a power stance or the out,
Yeah.
in a slightly alpha state. Dominance wise, it's not about superiority. It's not about it, but it's just putting yourself in a power, state. And when you put yourself in a power state, again, internally, then your externally, it's going to follow.
Excellent. So we're going to go into the 5 questions, and here are the questions. What's the fastest way to interrupt a negative spiral of self-doubt in the moment?
Take a deep breathing is mainly. It's probably very simple, and understand that spirals are going to happen, but you don't have to pay mind to it. So just let it go out, in and out of your brain and out your brain.
Perfect. That way, if you're getting mad that you're having a spiral, then you're having a second spiral within the first spiral.
And then now you're gonna have a third and fourth, so it's just gonna dominate.
Yeah.
So just say, I'm having a spiral, go do what you need to do, goodbye, get out and just take a deep breath in.
There you go. I love that. What's one morning habit you recommend to set up a confident day?
Morning ritual, set your intention. What do you want to get out of this day?
If someone is afraid of rejection, what's one reframe that helps them push through?
There's no such thing as rejection. It's just a simple reminder that your services are not needed today.
And what's one small daily ritual that helps build long-term self-belief?
Daily ritual is taking action, like being productive, like doing something that moves the needle towards your goal. So putting things on a calendar, saying, maybe 10 minutes I'll do some writing today, or maybe, 15 minutes I'll, put this together, or whatever it is you're setting to do, where your goal is, you work towards that every day consistently.
There you go. And consistent is the key. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to say to the audience before we sign off?
Just like with when I work with people, like I I believe it's so important that to know to all of us that we have everything we need to be successful. Every one of us have everything we need. A lot of times we just have to learn how to tap into that resource, and we can get easily distracted from that.
I like that empowering statement. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on UnCeiling You. I really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Let's take a breath together. In, out. Today, Dr. Bramante helped us see that self-sabotage isn't a character flaw. It's a protective reflex. It's your mind's way of trying to keep us safe when we're about to stretch. We learn how to pause, label that moment, and ask, is this danger or is this growth? Because in that small pause, you shift from fear to self-trust. And that's where real leadership begins. And that brings us to what the UnCeiling You Leadership Reset program is all about. It's a program that I'm putting together for the leader who's outwardly successful, but inwardly running on empty. The person who others rely on for stability, yet often feels like they're holding it together with grit and a lot of caffeine. It's for the high performers who are realizing that being busy, super busy, isn't the same as having impact. That the next level won't come from working harder, but from working with greater calm, clarity, and trust in themselves. It's for the woman and the purpose-driven man who is done everything right on paper, but still questions whether her voice or his voice truly lands. It's for the man and woman who's tired of leading from constant urgency and wants to rediscover ease without losing excellence. In the UnCeiling You Leadership Reset, we reconnect the dots between body, mind, and mission. So your nervous system, your goals, your leadership presence finally move in the same direction. What you practice today, noticing the signal, naming the pattern, negotiating with your critic, and anchoring safety, that is the foundation of reset. Because leadership isn't about control, it's about coherence. It's learning to lead yourself first so you can lead others with steadiness and integrity. If this conversation resonated, I invite you to go deeper. Join the waitlist for the UnCeiling You Leadership Reset program. You'll find the link in the notes. Step into leadership that feels like clarity, not pressure, like alignment, not exhaustion. Thank you for listening to UnCeiling You. I'm your host, Dr. Natalie Luke. And remember, your power begins in the pause.